In the bustling city of Atlanta, where the sound of planes taking off from Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport echoes through the streets, a day of travel turns into a fight for dignity and justice. This is the story of Naomi Carter, a poised and self-assured woman who faced humiliation at the hands of a smug security officer, only for the tables to turn in the most unexpected way. What the TSA agent didn't know was that Naomi wasn't just any passenger. Her husband, a business magnate, held more influence over the airport than anyone could imagine. Naomi Carter glided through the airport terminal, a vision of grace and elegance. Her fitted emerald green silk dress shimmered under the fluorescent lights, drawing a few admiring glances from the passengers rushing to their gates. Naomi was used to the attention, not because she sought it, but because she carried herself with the confidence of someone who knew her worth. Married to Marcus Carter, a powerhouse entrepreneur and philanthropist, Naomi was no stranger to the finer things in life, but she was also grounded, treating everyone she met with respect. The morning had been typical so far: check-ins, a quick coffee, and a glance at her phone to ensure she was on time for her flight to Chicago, where Marcus was hosting a charity gala later that evening. As she approached the TSA security checkpoint, she noticed a man in uniform leaning casually against a metal detector. His eyes tracked her as she moved, his smirk uncomfortably wide. "Step aside, ma'am," the man barked, straightening his posture. His name tag read Henderson. He was in his late 40s, with graying hair and an air of arrogance that suggested he relished wielding authority. Naomi hesitated, taken aback by his abrupt tone. "Is there a problem?" she asked, her voice steady but polite. "That dress looks suspicious." Henderson sneered, gesturing toward her. "We're going to have to conduct a thorough search." Naomi blinked, stunned. She had traveled countless times in designer outfits, and this was the first time anyone had insinuated that her clothing might pose a security threat. "It's just a dress," she replied, her tone sharper now. Henderson didn't bother responding. Instead, he motioned for another TSA agent to begin rifling through Naomi's belongings. Her handbag, wallet, and even a small jewelry case was scrutinized as if they might contain something nefarious. Naomi stood still, the heat of embarrassment creeping up her neck as other passengers began to watch the spectacle unfold. Then came the moment she'd never forget. Henderson reached for the hem of her dress without warning. Before Naomi could react, the sharp sound of ripping fabric cut through the air. "Oops," Henderson said with a smirk, holding a torn piece of the delicate silk between his fingers. "Guess it wasn't as sturdy as it looked." Naomi froze, her shock giving way to a flush of anger. The elegant gown she had carefully chosen for the evening was now irreparably damaged. The fabric split along the side, exposing her legs in a way that felt humiliating and degrading. Whispers rippled through the line of passengers, some murmuring in disapproval while others simply gawked. "What are you doing?" Naomi snapped, her voice rising. "This is completely unprofessional." Henderson shrugged, his smirk unwavering. "Fragile fabric. Ma'am, not my fault it couldn't handle a little inspection." Naomi felt her pulse quicken, a mix of rage and humiliation coursing through her. This wasn't just about the dress, it was about the utter disrespect, the blatant abuse of authority. She clenched her fists, willing herself to remain composed. "You're going to regret this," she said, her voice low and steady, though her hands trembled. Henderson chuckled, clearly unfazed. Sure, lady. File your complaint. Won't change a thing. But what Henderson didn't know was that Naomi wasn't alone in this fight. As she reached for her phone to call Marcus, she resolved that this moment would not define her. This wasn't just about her, it was about standing up against anyone who thought they could strip someone of their dignity without consequence. Naomi stood near the checkpoint, her torn dress clinging awkwardly to her frame, the sound of murmurs and judgmental whispers lingering in the air. She took a deep breath and clenched her phone, dialing Marcus. Her fingers trembled, not from fear, but from sheer indignation. The line rang twice before his familiar voice answered, calm and commanding. Hey, Naomi, what's wrong? Her composure finally cracked. Marcus, I need you here, she said, her voice tight with controlled anger. A TSA agent just tore my dress, in front of everyone. He humiliated me and acted like it was a joke. Marcus went silent for a moment, but Naomi could almost hear the tension building on the other end. When he finally spoke, his tone was sharp, the calm replaced by a simmering fury. I'll be there in 10 minutes. Stay right where you are. Naomi let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Marcus didn't make empty promises. When he said he'd handle something, he meant it. She glanced back at Henderson, who had returned to scanning other passengers, a smug grin still plastered on his face. He clearly thought the matter was over. But Naomi knew better. True to his word, Marcus arrived minutes later, cutting an imposing figure as he strode through the terminal, dressed impeccably in a tailored navy suit. His presence seemed to command the room, his intensity palpable. Passengers instinctively moved aside as he made his way toward Naomi, his eyes narrowing when he saw her standing in the torn dress. Naomi, he said softly, his voice calm but laced with concern. Are you okay? I'm fine, she said, though her trembling hands betrayed her. But this is unacceptable. Marcus turned to the nearest TSA supervisor, a petite woman with a badge that read Dawson. She looked up at him, startled by his sudden approach. Are you in charge here? Marcus asked, his voice firm but not raised. Yes, sir, she stammered. How can I help you? Marcus gestured toward Naomi. You can start by explaining why one of your agents thought it was appropriate to humiliate my wife in front of an entire terminal. He ripped her dress, laughed about it, and dismissed her like she was nothing. Dawson's eyes widened, and she glanced nervously at Henderson, who was now shifting uncomfortably in the background. I wasn't aware of this incident. Sir, let me look into it right away. You'll do more than that, Marcus said, his voice dropping to a dangerous tone. I want that agent brought over here now. And I expect a full explanation. Dawson nodded quickly and hurried off toward Henderson, who suddenly looked far less smug. Meanwhile, Marcus turned back to Naomi, his hand lightly resting on her shoulder. This isn't just about the dress, he said quietly. It's about making sure no one else has to go through this. Naomi nodded, her anger still simmering beneath the surface. He looked at me like I didn't matter, like he could do whatever he wanted because no one would stop him. Marcus's jaw tightened. He'll learn today. Within minutes, Henderson was standing in front of them, flanked by Dawson. His bravado had evaporated, replaced by an awkward defensiveness. He avoided making eye contact with Naomi or Marcus, instead staring at a spot on the floor. Agent Henderson, Dawson began, her voice stern. "Mr. and Mrs. Carter have lodged a serious complaint against you. Is there anything you'd like to say for yourself?" Henderson shuffled uncomfortably. "Look, it was just a misunderstanding," he mumbled. "I didn't mean to rip her dress, it was fragile." "That's not my fault." Marcus stepped forward, his towering presence making Henderson flinch. "Not your fault," he repeated, his voice cold. "You humiliated my wife, tore her clothing, and laughed about it in front of everyone. Don't stand here and act like it was an accident." Henderson opened his mouth to respond, but Marcus held up a hand, cutting him off. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to apologize to my wife, publicly, right now, and then you're going to face the consequences of your actions, because I promise you, there will be consequences." The passengers nearby began murmuring again. Their curiosity peaked as the confrontation unfolded. Naomi stood tall, her chin high, refusing to let the situation define her as a victim. She was more than that, she was a fighter. I'm sorry," Henderson muttered, barely audible. "Louder," Marcus demanded, his voice like steel, "so everyone can hear you." Henderson hesitated, his face reddening, before repeating, "I'm sorry, Mom, I didn't mean to ruin your dress." Naomi met his gaze, her voice steady and unyielding. "It's not just about the dress. It's about the way you treated me, with disrespect and arrogance. You need to learn that your badge doesn't give you the right to demean others." Henderson didn't respond, but his expression was one of defeat. Marcus turned to Dawson. "This isn't over," he said. "I want to know what disciplinary actions will be taken against this man, and I want the airport authorities informed. My lawyers will be in touch." Dawson nodded frantically. "Of course, sir, we'll handle it." Marcus placed a reassuring hand on Naomi's back, guiding her away from the scene. As they walked toward the terminal exit, Naomi felt a sense of empowerment growing within her. This wasn't just about her, it was about setting a precedent. No one should ever feel like they could abuse their position of power without consequences. As Naomi and Marcus walked away from the scene at the checkpoint, her resolve to ensure justice only grew stronger. The torn dress wasn't just a symbol of disrespect, it was a reminder of how power, when misused, could make someone feel small. Naomi wasn't going to let that stand. Not for herself and not for anyone else who might face the same treatment. Marcus, sensing her determination, asked, "What's the next step? Do you want to leave this here? Or do we make an example of him?" Naomi didn't hesitate. "We make an example. This isn't just about me anymore. This is about stopping people like Henderson from thinking they can get away with treating others this way." Marcus nodded, his jaw tightening. "Then let's do it." Minutes later, Marcus's phone buzzed. It was a call from a senior airport executive, a man named Jonathan Parks, who oversaw security operations for the entire facility. Parks wasn't just an acquaintance, he owed much of his career to Marcus, who had helped fund several of the airport's modernization projects. "Marcus," Parks began, his voice nervous, "I just heard about the incident. I'm appalled. Please know this isn't how we operate here. I'm already launching an internal investigation." Marcus's response was sharp. "Jonathan, an investigation isn't enough. That agent didn't just humiliate my wife. He used his authority to belittle her. And he thought he could walk away without consequences. I need more than promises. I need action." "Understood," Parks said quickly. We'll take immediate disciplinary action. Henderson will be suspended pending the investigation. And I'll personally issue a public statement apologizing to Naomi. That's a start, Marcus replied, his tone firm, but I want a full review of your training protocols and a commitment to prevent this kind of behavior from happening again. If you don't handle this right, I won't hesitate to bring this to the media. Meanwhile, Naomi found herself surrounded by a small group of passengers who had witnessed the incident. A middle-aged woman with kind eyes approached her hesitantly. "Ma'am, I just wanted to say I'm so sorry for what happened to you. It wasn't right, and it was hard to watch." Naomi smiled faintly, appreciating the woman's empathy. "Thank you, it means a lot to hear that." Another passenger chimed in, a younger man holding his phone. "I got the whole thing on video. If you need it, people like that agent shouldn't get away with this kind of behavior." Naomi's eyes lit up. "You recorded it?" The man nodded. "Yeah, from the moment he grabbed your dress. It's all here." Naomi exchanged contact information with him, her mind already racing with possibilities. The video could be powerful, a visual testament to the humiliation she endured and a tool to hold Henderson accountable. By the time Naomi and Marcus reached the airport's VIP lounge, the story had already begun to spread. A few journalists had caught wind of the altercation, thanks to bystanders sharing snippets of the incident on social media. Naomi scrolled through her phone, watching in real time as the hashtag Justice for Naomi started trending. Comments flooded in, many expressing outrage at Henderson's behavior. Marcus noticed her scrolling and placed a hand on her shoulder. "Are you okay with this going public? Once it's out there, it's hard to control the narrative." Naomi thought for a moment before nodding. "Yes, people need to see what happened. Not just for me, but for anyone else who's ever been treated this way. If going public helps bring about change, then it's worth it." The next day, the video surfaced on several major news outlets, sparking a media firestorm. The footage showed Henderson grabbing Naomi's dress, the fabric tearing under his grip, and his smug reaction afterward. Public outrage was immediate, with many calling for reforms in TSA training and accountability. Jonathan Parks issued a formal apology on behalf of the airport, promising sweeping changes. "This incident does not reflect our values or standards," he said in a press conference. "We are committed to ensuring every passenger is treated with dignity and respect." As the press conference aired, Naomi and Marcus sat side by side in their living room, watching. Naomi felt a mix of emotions, vindication, relief, and a renewed sense of purpose. Marcus turned to her, his expression serious. "You did this, Naomi. You turned something horrible into a moment of change." She smiled, though her eyes glistened with unshed tears. "We did this, and it's not over. This is just the beginning." As Henderson faced termination and a potential lawsuit, the airport began implementing new measures to improve staff training and accountability. Naomi was invited to participate in discussions about policy changes, using her voice to advocate for fairness and respect. The experience, though painful, had awakened something in her, a determination to fight not just for herself but for others who lacked the platform or resources to stand up to injustice. Naomi Carter was no longer just the woman in the torn dress. She was a symbol of resilience and the power of standing up for what's right. And for anyone who dared to underestimate her again, they would quickly learn one unshakable truth. You don't mess with a woman who knows her worth. Naomi Carter's story is more than just an account of injustice, it's a testament to resilience, self-worth, and the courage to stand up against abuse of power. It reminds us that dignity is a fundamental right and that no one, no matter their position, has the authority to strip it away. Her actions, along with the support of those who stood with her, brought about meaningful change and sent a clear message: respect is non-negotiable. This tale speaks to a broader truth. In a world where prejudices and power dynamics still linger, every act of courage can spark change. Whether you're facing discrimination, bullying, or any form of injustice, remember that your voice matters. Stand tall, seek allies, and never allow anyone to diminish your value. Together, we can build a society rooted in equality, respect, and compassion. To everyone watching, let Naomi's story inspire you to take a stand. Whether for yourself or for someone else, speak up when you see wrongs being committed. And remember that change often begins with one brave act. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more powerful, thought-provoking tales like this, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. By subscribing, you'll be the first to hear the latest, most compelling stories, brought to you for free. Click the subscribe button now and join a community that values justice, empowerment, and the celebration of human dignity. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next story. Until then, stay strong, stay kind, and always stand up for what's right.